What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again. In this time, we are here with George Harris of the Almighty Raven Age. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me, mate. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here, man. It's great to be able to talk with you, in particular, because we were actually, I don't know if you knew this, but we were supposed to do an interview right as you guys were like fleeing New York because of the COVID lockdown and everything that was
Oh,
happening.
yeah.
Like the day you
I
guys
mean,
fled the country was like the day I was scheduled to like meet and interview you guys. So it's great to finally make
wow.
this
I didn't.
happen.
I didn't realise that was you that it was scheduled with. That's quite funny actually. Well, yeah. Here we are after all this time.
Yeah, it only took 3 years. I know you guys are busy,
Yeah.
so the delay's forgivable, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm glad we got there in the end.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad to be talking with you now because Blood Omen, I think, is your best album yet. I think it blows Conspiracy and Darkness Will Rise out of the water, and those were fantastic records as well. Was the
Thanks, man.
was the intention to kind of just make a continuation of Conspiracy with Blood Omen, or was this meant to be like new uncharted territory for the Raven Age?
It was a bit of both. I think that it was like kind of unexpected, like uncharted territory. We never really sat down and said, "Right, lads, we need to better conspiracy. We need to write songs like this or like that." It was very natural, but I think because there was such a gap, and we had all that time, and we were kind of there was a change in members and stuff like that. Like the sound just naturally kind of, I guess, adapted or progressed. I think as you get older, your writing style sort of matures a little bit and stuff anyway. So it was all that going on, which was just like an amalgamation of everything, which turned out to be Blood Omen. I mean, it was very like had we gone in, had there been no pandemic and we were due to go and record Blood Omen, I think we scheduled in for like April 2020, which would have put a lot of pressure on us to actually finish it. But had we not had all that time, it would have been a very different album, which is quite, I don't know, it's quite scary to think about what it might have been now. Um, I think, yeah, it's one of them things. Who knows? Like, if we didn't have that time, would it have been as good an album? Would there have been different tracks on it? Maybe some of these tracks would have been on our next album or something. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, we're all happy with it, and I'm glad you think so too. We all kind of think it's the best body of work we've done so far.
Absolutely, it definitely is because like when I listen to like an album such as Serpent's Tongue, and then you go to like a track like The Journey, and then War in Heaven, and the way you end with Tears of Stone, like the ending was just such a magical ending to that. Like it kind of tied up the album with a pretty bow, as I like to say. When you go into the making of any album, is there like a vision that you have in mind, or is your songwriting process very like improvisational?
It's very very improv as a whole, but actually, what you just mentioned, I think the only thing we did have in mind is we wanted to start and end with a particular kind of feel to the album. We actually, I don't know if you noticed this, but the album is like bookended with the same melody. So
Okay, I
where
wasn't crazy
myself,
for thinking that. I thought I was like that sounds so similar, but
yeah, 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 no, it's actually the same thing. So when I wrote Tears of Stone, like the melody on the intro, like the guitar line, just so happens when I was sitting down working with Dan, who's our manager, and me and him started the band way back when, and he still writes and stuff. And he came up with this sort of epic piano piece. We were thinking this could potentially be like an intro to the album. And then what we noticed was found ourselves kind of humming the Tears of Stone melody on top of it, and it worked. And we were like, well, maybe that's quite a cool idea. Maybe we can try and like top and tail the album with the same melody. And then when we got to work with Audrey Riley on the strings and stuff, and she made the intro into this massive epic piece, we just said like, keep in these. We want to use these melodies from this song, so keep that kind of intertwined, and then we'll do the same on the outro. It just kind of gives it like, yeah, I don't know, like a familiar feeling when you get to the end, but it's like a different vibe because it's obviously coming to the end.
it's like when you listen to the same melody the first time, and then you listen to it after experiencing a bunch of other melodies in between, you almost have like a different perspective. It's like when you listen to the same melody in your head over and over again, and it starts to sound like different in a way. It kind of has that sort of
Yeah,
effect to it.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I think kind of we kind of wanted we spoke about doing that sort of thing before. It never really, I don't know, had the means to do it, but yeah, working with Audrey and having live strings and stuff, the album just helped amplify that.
Next year is going to be 10 years since many people first heard the Raven Age with the debut EP. And, like, you know, there is such an evolution from that EP to Darkness Will Rise, Conspiracy, and Now. And this is sort of like a debate I like to have with artists in a way. Is the evolution that an artist goes through, can you really have control over that? Do you really dictate your own evolution in a way? Or does it just kind of have to be like a natural evolution where you just kind of let things fall into place?
That is a tough question. It's really tough. I mean, and also I can't believe it's 10 years since you've come out. It makes me feel so old.
Yeah.
But I think in our case, like it has been. We haven't forced anything. Like you can kind of control it. I think if you try and force yourself to do certain things. If you've got like a goal you want to achieve, like okay, a bit like let's say if you're Bring Horizon, for instance, we're gonna start off as like a like a death metal band or a deathcore band, and then we in 4 albums time we want to be able to be on like Radio 1 in the UK. Then that's like an obvious sort of stepping stone sort of thing. But we've never really sort of taken that on board or had that sort of philosophy. We just kind of it sounds like a pretty boring way answer, but like we just sort of go on with what we feel. We just write the music that we like, and we yeah, me personally anyway, I've never sort of sat down and thought, right, I need to write like a bit of a heavier song, or I need to write a poppier song, or anything like that. It's just the songwriters that we have in our camp have their own strengths, and together it sounds like Raven Age.
Yeah, and that creative energy that you mentioned, or like that sort of feeling that you talked about that you work off of, can you really seek out that feeling? Do you kind of like maybe go and look for inspiration, or is that something that just has to strike you?
You can go looking for it. Like I always used to say to myself, like I always used to say to Dan, like I'd be like, oh, you can't force it. You can't force it. However, what I've noticed more recently is that like, every time I pick up a guitar or something, I'll 9 times out of 10 I'll come up with something, and then you get hooked, and then so you can actually spark the creative process and the inspiration yourself just by doing it. So, as you get older, you sort of kind of know roughly what sort of things are gonna get your creative mind, creative juices like going. So you can kind of like I like kind of watching films and epic films like anime films, that sort of stuff, and it kind of just gets those sparks flying, and you can sort of induce it to a certain extent. I think
I could tell like that you do take some, like I feel like your music, they're fucking kick-ass, down and dirty rock and roll heavy metal albums, but I feel like they are also very like film scory in a way, almost as if like if like I've always said like with the guitar wise, it's if like Herman Lee of Dragon Force and Hans Zimmer like were combined together in a way.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I think it's a film score is something, right from the off. Myself and Dan being two fans of film score in general. I think he was actually going to go to university and sort of train to do film score, but didn't in the end. But it's definitely woven within our sound. Even that's why we're so excited to actually get like a live orchestra on this album. Just it enhances those sort of emotional kind of melodies and stuff which we tend to opt for. And the albums, or the songs in general, they're all generally quite dynamic. There's lots of dips and dives, and I think that's the main thing I like to get from music for me personally, is just to get like emotion in it, whether it's like sort of sad and dreary emotion like you get in songs like Brave of the Fireflies, or if it's like a upbeat, punchy, like pump you up kind of energy like out of Serpent's Tongue or something. But as long as it makes you feel something, then it kind of ticks a box.
Well, if you take, because I could tell by listening to the solos and the riffs that maybe there are some like emotions that are channeled in that are like maybe more personal, that maybe like wonder what you or Matt or or Tommy were like maybe all feeling at that time. But like but then there are some times where I'd be like, oh, I could tell he was watching anime when writing that solo or something like that. So depending on what you're playing, and depending where that source of inspiration came from, does that maybe resonate with you when you play it, and does that maybe feel like you channel a different energy into it?
Well, I've kind of, well, when I'm like referring to emotion and stuff, I think it naturally comes out in the music. Like if you come up with something and you're like, okay, this has got like a super minor sort of key feel to it, and it just feels like this sort of concept, like lyrical concept, would fit right with it. Then that it's really like the lyrical content which I'll sort of get more deep into in terms of the feel of it and the emotion. Um, I think the music part of it is kind of something that the emotion kind of comes out. It's just like a natural thing. Like for instance, I'm trying to think like the riff to War in Heaven, for instance. I was just jamming one day and was just like, I was nodding my head along, come up with this riff, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, and I'm kind of buzzing and vibing. Whereas like something like the intro to Tears of Stone or the intro to Essence of Time is like more of a sort of down, dreary kind of thing. Maybe that was just because I was feeling those particular emotions at the time. I don't know, but then you go, okay, so what's gonna work with this piece of music? It's going to be a concept more like this or more like this.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Mm.
I kind of find it difficult to write about like about my personal feelings and stuff, which is why I tend to like find a story and write about that from that perspective.
Mm. But if
Just
you're
just the
working
way.
on something for a long period of time in a way, does that make it a little bit more difficult to sort of maintain the initial spark of the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which is why like I tend to try it, especially lyrically. I try to focus like and get it done like whilst that inspiration is there, because you're right, I have had it a few times where I've written like the lines to a chorus and then I'll come back and be like, oh, I'm not really feeling the same like emotions or whatever it was now, and you have to kind of get back into that sort of zone, and it makes it a bit more difficult. So I think it is always best to like if you've got something you're feeling inspired, just kind of go for it, try and get it nailed.
Do you look at your albums in a way because you have like maybe like a storytelling inspiration? Do you almost look at the Raven Ages albums to be concept albums in a way, like changing? Like, do you recommend that like Changing of the Guard needs to how you start off the story, and then Tears of Stone is how you end the story? But then if you like go to like an album such as like Conspiracy or something like that, do you recommend that like it starts off with Bloom of the Poison Seed and then you end with Grave of the Fireflies?
Yeah, definitely. I think like we've got a bit of an old school kind of attitude when it comes to writing albums, and we like them to be like a set piece. Like it would be ideal. I know obviously people stream stuff these days and listen to whatever song whenever, but or if you catch a song on a playlist, then you're not going to get that. But if you do listen to the albums as a whole, we always we spend quite a long time trying to work out the flow of the album and the dynamic, and it should hopefully take you on a bit of a journey. And it's why we choose, songs to end the album, like "Grave of the Fireflies" and "Tears of Stone," just because they give you a certain kind of feeling at the end of the album. Yeah, that's always been quite important to us, just because you know, we've always been quite into the physical product and the storytelling. The albums as a whole aren't really concept albums, like subjectively, but there is like a running theme across the albums with just the band's name and the kind of the lore behind that, and our Raven King character and stuff. So we try and weave that across the top of the albums and the band in general, and then the songs have their own meanings themselves.
Do you feel that maybe within the album and even when you play live that you almost kind of like portray a character?
Yeah, I mean, I think when playing live, like you've got to just try and, I don't know. I think if you just play the songs with absolute, you kind of give it 100%, and you play the songs with emotion, and you sing the song with that emotion, they will kind of come across. I think like the story behind the band, and our Raven King, the Ravens of the Tower of London, and that sort of thing. That's more of like a visual thing, and like once you become a fan of the band or whatever, you start looking into that. It's just like another cool concept to get into, and the artwork's quite cool, and you can kind of lots of our fans have started getting our Raven skull like tattooed on them and all that sort of stuff. It's just more another element to kind of go in depth with the band. So it's not just about, oh, listen to this song and that's it. There's
Yeah.
kind of more to it. You know what I mean?
I feel like your albums, in a way, like because you have this long running theme, it makes me wonder the Raven King and whatnot, like where it's going next. You almost feel like maybe like if a person is just discovering the Raven Age now, before they listen to Blood Omen, they should like listen to Darkness Will Rise, a Conspiracy, get caught up in the story. Or your album's almost kind of like Lord of the Rings in that regard.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it would definitely help. But even if you have just, people have just got on board kind of now, we kind of, we really, I don't know why, but we have the idea of the Raven King when we first, we're even just discussing the idea of being a band and what this character might be and what might become. But we kept it super mysterious and super kind of background, especially on Dance Will Rise, like this hooded figure is in a couple of pieces of artwork, which are just in the booklet on like some album tracks and stuff. So you just think, oh, there's, as soon as you see things like 2 or 3 times popping up, you're like, okay, what's that? There's like a bit of a theme going on, but who is this guy? And then next album, like the front cover, there's like a hooded figure kind of leaving this castle, and then people are like, what the hell's going on? Who is this guy? And you can just about see it's like a beat shape. And yeah, with Blood Omen, we decided to go, sort of a bit more full frontal with the Raven King and what he's up to, and there's like the Tower of London and London burning in the background and stuff of the inside. So yeah, it's just another sort of piece of the creative process. We think we might as well go all out.
Was this always the vision too for the Raven Age? Like even with the debut EP in a way, with the self-titled EP, or was that more or less with that 10 years ago? You were just kind of like testing the waters to see what the sound will be.
It was a bit of both. I think like we were kind of testing the waters with trying to find our own sound, and we also like we started this idea of the Raven King. We kind of didn't really know where we wanted to go with it properly back then, so we actually kind of shied away from getting it involved with the EP, and just like the artwork's just like a raven perched on like a dead tree. But yeah, it was something we knew we were going to kind of develop, but we sort of held it back until, I feel like we were kind of holding it back until we felt confident enough to go. I think we were confident with Conspiracy and stuff, but it was like first album with new singer. We had no time to gel as a band. Like, he joined and we just went straight in the studio and like, well, hope this works kind of thing. But Blood Omen, we had that time. We gelled as a group. Our songwriting was more like collaborative, and we felt like we found our sound a bit more. Therefore, I think we felt a bit more confident going, okay, let's just go full whack with our story, with the Raven King and the artwork and stuff, because we feel a lot more confident in this album as a whole.
Fair enough. And the final question I wanted to ask you is one little silly question I like to ask all guitar players, because a lot of times when I ask a guitarist how does a song start, 9 times out of 10 they say, oh, it usually starts off with a riff. So my question to you is, do you think we will ever run out of riffs one day?
I mean, judging by my voice note app on my phone, I don't think so. Like, not just me, like every guitarist out there. There's so many different riffs that I've got. I've come up with it just in the last like month. I think we're probably, as a species, the guitarist is never going to stop coming up with riffs. I don't think so. I think we're in safe hands.
Yeah, I mean, especially now with guitars having like 75 different strings on it and stuff.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. At what point doesn't it just become a harp? But like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I have zero experience in anything other than a 6-string these days, but maybe I should test the waters.
I don't know. I've seen some of those things at NAMM with like the 80 strings, and my only reason for buying it is I would just take all the strings off and use it as like an ironing board or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, God knows how you're supposed to get your hand around those things. I mean, I see like Jared Dines play his like 18 string. Like, oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so cool. I watched that like live at NAMM, and I'm just like, oh my god! Of course, it's Jared Dines playing that shit.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly. Too good.
And there was one more question I actually wanted to ask, if that's cool. Just for like a down memory lane, because you were the first interview to fall through as a result of COVID lockdown in a way. I remember the day that you were like, your publicist at the time was literally like, they're fleeing the country right now. So we got to cancel this interview. I'm just wondering, I remember packing up my shit and like hiding in my apartment, but traveling back during that time after doing a kick-ass tour, that had to have made maybe flavor the music a little bit.
Just a bit, yeah. I mean, we'd been doing like a radio promo like tour, so we flew into like LA, picked up a van. We had like 2 acoustic guitars, acoustic bass, and our drummer was hitting a cajon. And we were just making our way across like radio stations across countries. It's great fun actually. It's a hell of a lot of driving, but like we had such a laugh, and just doing acoustic performances, some interviews, just just some promo stuff, and then like. Yeah, so 2 days after, I guess we were scheduled to have an interview. We were supposed to have our first ever headline show in the US in New York. We were going to do New York, Chicago, LA, and then that was it. Just like kind of dipping our toe in the water with headline shows over the pond, and we were so excited to do that. And then it's like 2 days before, the borders are shutting down. You guys could potentially get stuck out there, so you're gonna have to fly you home. And oh man, did that take the wind out of our sails. Like, we'd had an amazing 2019, like 5 months or so worth of touring, and this thing in February into March in the US, and we were about to do our first headline shows out there, and we had some stuff scheduled, and we were working on the album. And it's like, the worst thing was we just not knowing when it was going to end, like the entire pandemic, not knowing when it's going to end. Like, it's like someone dangling a carrot like a few yards in front of you and just going like, what's going on? I think if it had been like a straight up, right, okay, everyone, just shut down and do whatever for like 2 years, and then we're going to go back, that would have sucked. But at least you could have gone, right, okay, let's
now,
do
where
this
were
with
we?
our... yeah, exactly.
But
But
it feels great.
Not a great time.
It feels great to finally make this interview up, I must say. It only took 3 years, but we finally got the Raven Age on here. So
we've got there in the end. Yeah, no, well, thanks for having us back.
Anytime, man, anytime. And I know you got a lot of press, so I'll let you go. Everybody, we are here with George Harris of the Raven Age Blood Omen. It is out now. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Cheers, man.